Good morning, Southern California, AM 1220 KHTS. Host Fred Arnold coming to you on Facebook Live and HometownStation.com. Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show. I'm here with my good friend John Vance. But before I introduce John Vance, this is a special edition talking about taxes in the new tax law that was, it's not officially law yet, but it was passed by the Senate and the House of Representatives. So we're going to go deep into that. But my guest, John Vance, longtime friend of mine with Vance Wealth, a boutique financial planning firm here in Santa Clarita Valley. I know they offer securities through Raymond James Financial Services and a member FINRA and SIPC. And certainly this hour isn't tax advice. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax professional. I am a mortgage professional and a radio host, but I want to get as much information out as possible. I know John feels the same way when he gives advice to his clients. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, a big one, huh?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy these last couple of weeks trying to figure out what's going to be in this new plan.
Yeah. The one thing I want to jump to right off the bat and ask you your perspective as a financial planner, and that is the big standard deduction increase. It on average in 2017 as an individual, you can write off $6,350 as a standard deduction, and it's going to increase to $12,000. And as a couple, you can write off $12,700. It's going to increase to $24,000. That seems like that's good news, right? Off the bat.
Yeah, so off the bat, it looks like a good plan because, especially for a married couple, that $24,000 is substantially more. But families are going to lose the exemption. So, that is going to somewhat offset that doubling of the standard deduction.
You know, they talk about that the personal exemption of being $4,050. When you compare that with the $12,000, you end up having, in reality, a reduction, not as great of a gain as you think, is what I should say.
That's correct, because if you're looking at like a family of four, that's 4 exemptions.
Yeah.
So you're losing that, but they did try to make that back up on the child care credit. So there's a tax credit. It starts to get really complicated, though, because as you're starting to add things up and subtracting them, there's not like a clear-cut answer, but it looks to us more like a neutral move rather than positive or negative.
Yeah, but they're telling it to be positive, and the one thing that I'm concerned about is you said once you start adding it up, it's still complex.
Yeah, and one of the things is we're going to realize as Californians who pay a fair amount in taxes, that's where we get our write-offs. We get our deductions from the taxes we pay, both in property taxes, our state income tax, and now the standard deduction is going to the doubling of it is going to change how we look at things and really how we look at paying those taxes going forward.
Yeah, and those deductions that you get. I want to jump into the young, if you will, not necessarily the millennials, but the young home buyers. When I say young, first-time buyers. How is it going to affect them? John, it's been said that the average renter has a net worth between $12,000 and $15,000 nationwide. That's their net worth, 401k, money in the bank, equity in their car, you name it. But the average homeowner has a net worth between $125,000 and $175,000, depending on what area you're looking at, much more along the coasts. I think this bill takes away the great deduction as a percentage in California of owning a home because they doubled the personal standard or the standard deduction. I think it's going to get to a point where it's disincentivizing people, or maybe not incentivizing at least, people to buy a home, even a first-time home.
Well, it definitely has that possibility. What's hard to know is when you get a change like this, does it adjust quickly or does it adjust over time? So you could have people who are in the market for buying a home this year who say, you know what, now it's not as affordable as I thought it was because when I add up the ability to deduct property taxes, when I add up the mortgage interest write-off, depending on how expensive of a home they're going to buy, they really have to look at the numbers a lot more closely. Where before, I think it was fairly conventional wisdom that people know, hey, I buy a house, I'm going to get some good tax write-offs, and it's kind of an easy decision to make. Now it's a little tougher, especially with home prices being up. Mm-hmm. You have to really look at those numbers and make sure it's going to benefit your family on the short term, but long term we do know that. As we deal with a lot of retired clients, we know they're better off when they have their house paid off, when they go into retirement with no debt or limited debt. And so if you start at a young age with generations where they never build that equity and they don't have that opportunity, that could set them back for them to have an asset where when they get into retirement, they don't have to worry about a big monthly payment.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. One thing I don't believe they did, and I'm not sure if you saw anything in the tax law having to do, the amount of debt that these young, not just young, but these most recent college graduates have is enormous. Is there any deduction or anything in the tax law to help them out? Because I think that is going to prevent a lot of people from pursuing a lot of dreams of home ownership. They're going to be saving in their 401k later because they're paying this enormous debt.
There was no relief for student interest deduction. They didn't do away with it, but there is no relief. There was no incentive there to deal with that growing problem. And that in fact, over the last 10 years, that's the one area in our economy where debt has expanded. All other sectors, debt's been going down. As baby boomers have been getting ready for retirement, debt has gone down pretty much across the board, except for in the home loan space. That's where it's really, in the student loan space, that's where it's really expanded, and we haven't seen any improvement there.
Yeah, and that's where my biggest concern with doubling the standard deduction, it doesn't make that incentive to buy a home is great. And the reason why I think that incentive is important, because some people, the purists were saying, hey, put it on a level playing field. But if you keep people in apartments, who's making all the money? The investors and the people that own the apartments. Whereas if you incentivize home ownership, you're helping people gain wealth, build wealth. But one thing, you also increase mortgage and housing activity. And you know that when you sell a house, especially in California, you put about $100,000 of economic growth into the local economy. And I think we can't ignore that.
Well, certainly not. And when you start seeing housing turnover, people moving up, that does create activity as you put in new furniture, new appliances. Sometimes you want to get new kids.
Yep.
Maybe. You try to upgrade everything. So, that is one thing that does concern us, that we're going to look at, where either we have renters that are permanently renters and then they don't really get into the fabric of ownership.
Yeah, and I think it's important we look at that. We're going to jump to a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk to you specifically about what's called the SALT, and it's called the state and local tax, and the impact it's going to have on filing your taxes this coming year. Well, I hope you're enjoying this edition of the Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Fred Arnold, on KHTS.
Six Flags lights up into a spectacular winter wonderland. Don't miss Holiday in the Park with over 1 million lights and new holiday festivities, plus thrilling rides like Santa's Wild Sleigh Ride VR Coaster. Time is running out to get free admission with a season pass. Buy 4, get a free upgrade to Gold with free season parking and Hurricane Harbor. For the best deal, buy a membership, less than $8 each per month. Must buy and visit by December 31st.
Genghis Khan Mongolian Barbecue and Chinese Buffet. Healthy vegetables and lean meats. A low-carb treat. Create your own bowls with our delicious meats and always fresh vegetables. Then, blend in your own secret sauce. Feast at the all-you-can-eat buffet and barbecue for the same low price. A local favorite for over 25 years, Genghis Khan is still located on Lyons Avenue just east of the I-5. Enter between the Chevron and Shell gas stations. Come and see us soon at Genghis Khan.
KHTS strives to give the Santa Clarita Valley all the information they need. And when our computers aren't working the way they should, we call Resurgence, your true source for IT. Resurgence provides outstanding customer service while also providing the highest technical ability. They strive to do what's best to improve and protect your business. For more information on Resurgence, call 349-4114 or visit resurgenceit.com.
Do you like to rock across Africa?
Then the wait is over.
Africa Rocks! Africa's Greatest Hits is now available at the San Diego Zoo! And who could forget 99 red baboons?
Or the African crested porcupine smash hit, I Got Quills to Pay the Bills! Hey, don't get too close!
And the hits keep on coming!
Africa Rocks has all your favorites from 6 different African habitats.
Hungry like a leopard!
Ibex is back!
Harder, better, faster! us stronger.
And a new track from Kendrick Lamar.
Now, Larry.
Yes, Chuck?
A collection of this magnitude, I'd fly to Africa.
Well, don't pack your bags, friend. Africa Rocks is only available right here at the San Diego Zoo.
Wow, that really does rock.
No, it Africa Rocks.
Welcome to Africa Rocks. Experience 6 different African habitats, including our first ever aquatic enclosure with African penguins. Only at the San Diego Zoo. KHTS.
Good afternoon, Southern California, AM 1220 KHTS, on a beautiful and absolutely gorgeous Friday afternoon before Christmas. I'm with John Vance with the Wealth Group, the Wealth Management.
Vance Wealth Group.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but John is an expert, known him for almost 24 years, knows his stuff. We're talking about taxes, the new tax bill. I want to talk about going to mortgage loans, and there was one change on the deductibility of interest on a mortgage loan, and it really affects those high-cost housing states. And I have a statistic I want to share. The District of Columbia, 17.3% of all homes are worth more than $1 million. California, 13.6%. Hawaii, 13.5%. Rounding off the top 6, New York, 7%. Massachusetts, 5.2%. Connecticut, 4.5%. When you go to the other ones, Alaska is a dismal 0.8%. Good for them, right? They can afford them. It's more affordable there. Wisconsin, who wants to live in Alaska? It's cold there. No disrespect to Alaska. Great fishing, beautiful country, but really is cold. Wisconsin, another cold state, 0.7%. Iowa, 0.6%, and Indiana, 0.5%. Well, they lowered the deduction from $1 million to $750 on what you can write off. But one interesting statistic is pre-2017 mortgages are grandfathered in. So if you got a mortgage above $750 up to $1 million, you can write that off. And then refinances, if you refinance an existing $1 million loan, $800,000 loan, then you can write off the interest on that. Because that's grandfathered in too, correct?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I still, they got this bill through so fast that who knows how it gets settled. There might be some last-minute tweakings, but that's what it appears. And then the other part of that is home equity line of credit. Mm-hmm. Looks like in 2018, no mortgage interest will be deductible. So those people who have those set up already, I don't believe those are grandfathered in. Those are going to be immediately excluded from a deductible item.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunate because I think home equity lines of credit, especially if you have a low 3.75% interest rate or 4.1, why would you get a refinance when rates pop up to 5.1? You'd get a home equity. It allows you to write off the interest of repairs that you're putting to your home. I'm surprised they didn't carve it out to say if you invested in your home, if you can show receipts for investment into your home, you can write it off. But they eliminated that altogether. Yeah,
unfortunately, and the hard part is that people who've already spent that money and have debt on their house, they're not going to get that deduction anymore.
Yeah, they're not. As rates continue to rise because our economy's heating up a little bit. The tax bill was signed into law today by Trump. On that, I want to address something really big, and that is the state and local tax. They call it the SALT provision, or the SALT section. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so basically the final bill is capped the amount of basically state income tax and property tax. They've capped that amount at $10,000 per year. So it's not $10,000 each. You add those up. So, you take a typical house in Santa Clarita, $500,000 with a
That's not a typical house.
Okay,
more like $750.
$750 with a $9,000 per year property tax,
yep.
And an earner making $10,000, or paying $10,000 in California state income tax. They're at $19,000. They're only going to be able to deduct $10,000. So
but
they're
you
capped.
didn't even calculate interest on that one.
No.
If the interest was another $7,000. They've already hit that max amount that they traditionally would have been able to write off.
Well, so on the interest, so when you break down itemized deductions, there's like 5 categories: medical write-offs, state and local income tax, mortgage interest, miscellaneous itemized deductions. Those are the big categories. So the state and local income tax is the one that's capped at $10,000. The mortgage interest one will be capped at $750,000 of debt, but not a dollar amount. So those will all add up to make up your itemized deduction. But now, because the standard deduction has gone up to $24,000, there's going to be a lot of people in California that have traditionally been able to write all these off. They're going to be capped out, and they're going to start using the standard deduction, which and the last one I forgot to mention was charities. Yep. Charities is another deductible item, and so there's going to be some impact. It's hard to measure what that impact is going to be in California, but the higher tax states like California are going to feel the brunt of it.
So let's take just for instance, a family here in Santa Clarita Valley. Let's say one of the spouses is a teacher making good money, let's say $60,000, $5,000 a month, and the other spouse is a first responder, fireman, policeman, or police lady, and they're making, let's say, 10 grand, so $15,000 a month, they're making $180,000 a year, and they're both working pretty hard, right? At a 12% tax rate after the deductions, let's just, again, not being an accountant, but just throwing some round numbers, let's say it's on $150,000. That's 12 plus 6. That's $18,000 that they traditionally got to write off on as their state tax, right?
Correct.
Let's say they have 2 car payments. There's another $500 because they can write that off, right? So now they're at $18,500. Okay, so now, we haven't even looked at their mortgage yet. $750,000 loan. Help me out with the math here. Let's say they're paying $9,000 in tax. What am I at? 18.5 plus 9? 26.5 or so?
Yep.
And then interest on top of that. And let's say that's going to be $2,000 a month. So you're already up $24,000 above that. You're not able to write off a lot of that interest, right?
Well, you're not going to get the benefit for you, but one of the things that was in this tax code, they lowered the brackets for pretty much all Americans. Mm-hmm. So they took the brackets, and there was 7 prior to them starting this process. The House wanted it to be only 3 brackets to kind of simplify it, but the final bill actually was 7 brackets. And so
that's simplification?
Well, that's what they promised, right? So one of the things that we've been struggling with as we've been going through and perusing the code and looking at the new bill, it's complicated. It's actually not more simple. And so the one thing that, even though we're going to lose some write-offs as Californians, because of the lower tax brackets, the numbers we're seeing, we're still going to get some tax relief. It's just that they're going to come from different places. It's not going to be from the traditional home ownership. It's coming from the standard deduction. It's coming because people are now in a position where they're actually in some lower tax brackets. And so we've been doing the numbers. We think for about 80% of Americans, 80% of tax-paying Americans, they're going to see a reduction in their tax.
Of tax-paying Americans. That's not necessarily 80% of California homeowners.
Correct.
Santa Clarita homeowners who are in the high tax state, who pay high property tax, and who have a high mortgage because that's how much they cost. I think and so I would kind of maybe I don't know if I agree or argue the point that it disproportionately affects those in high tax states.
Oh, for sure. And I think there's some political motivation, obviously, towards that, right? Because the high tax state tend to be the blue states on the coast, and that's what we're seeing is pretty clear with the politicians and their efforts. And you know what? The one thing that the media I don't think is doing a service to Americans. They're making it seem like this is going to hit everyone and it's a giveaway to the wealthy. Mm-hmm. The numbers we've seen for California wealthy, or some of our clients that have done pretty well, they're going to actually see an increase in taxes.
Yep.
That middle class in California, and I know that's a broad range, in the $50,000 to $250,000 in income, they are going to see reduction for most cases. We're going to see some exceptions, but for the most part, they're going to get some tax relief. So we're excited about that. We think there could have been some better ways of tackling it, but we still think there's going to be relief.
Yeah. We're going to jump to a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk to you more, John, about the corporate side and how the corporate tax rate dropped quite a bit. And so you're listening to Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Hour. I'm your host, Fred Arnold, on KHTS.
But rest assured, Patterson's Collision Center is here to help. Patterson's is a family-owned and operated collision repair facility providing the Santa Clarita Valley with premium collision repairs. Patterson's prides itself on being the only California-certified green repair shop in all of Santa Clarita. They are insurance claim specialists and even offer payment plans for your deductible. For personalized, friendly service, visit pattersonscollisioncenter.com or call 294-1011 and let Patterson's Collision Center help ease your worries today.
What can a Century 21 Troop Real Estate agent do for you? They show your home, solve your problems, and pet your dog. They provide the service of a butler and a savvy business tycoon. They explain the market, love a good barbecue, and would never drink milk from the carton, so invite one over. They do your homework, legwork, and sometimes yard work, so basically they provide the TLC to YOU. This is who they are, this is what they do. Call Century 21 Troop Real Estate at 661-705-0700. That's 661-705-0700. Century 21 Troop Real Estate, smarter, bolder, faster. Each office is independently owned and operated.
Presto Pasta. Real Italian. Presto. Fresh, homemade every day. Fresh chopped, never frozen veggies, hand-layered lasagna, homemade croutons, sauces, and dressings, Parmesan grated tableside, 100% whole milk mozzarella. You'll love Presto Pasta's popular sampler combo. Meat lasagna, chicken piccata, fettuccine alfredo, super salad, garlic bread, and a beverage. Presto Pasta Valencia in the River Oak Shopping Center.
Six Flags lights up into a spectacular winter wonderland. Don't miss Holiday in the Park with over 1 million lights and new holiday festivities, plus thrilling rides like Santa's Wild Sleigh Ride VR Coaster. Time is running out to get free admission with a season pass. Buy 4, get a free upgrade to Gold with free season parking and Hurricane Harbor. For the best deal, buy a membership, less than $8 each per month. Must buy and visit by December 31st.
KHTS.
Good afternoon, Southern California, Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Fred Arnold, and I'm joined by John Vance with Vance Wealth, a boutique financial planning firm here in the Santa Clarita Valley, who offers securities through Raymond James Financial Services. So, John, I want to talk about the corporate tax rate going from 40%, right, to
it's 35%.
Is it 35?
35 to the highest right now is at 21%.
21%. Now, so I'm a big fan of dropping taxes, all taxes. I think one thing, just cut expenses and we'd be pretty well off, right? But I'm a big fan of cutting taxes, but did they do it the right way? And the reason why I say that is they just cut the tax rate in hopes that businesses will use that in order to spend more or bring money back from overseas, bring more operations back to the United, which is great if they do. I love the idea because then we all benefit. The economy heats up, people get jobs. But there's nothing that tied them to doing that. They can still just pay out dividends with the money, correct?
Correct. So it's a great question. Did they do it the right way? And honestly, I can't tell you with any degree of certainty whether they did it the right way. So what we got to deal with is what did they do and how do we think that's going to impact? I think there's a lot of different ways they could have tackled this. So the approach they took was on essentially C Corps, which are just large corporations, mostly larger corporations are C Corps,
Corp, yep.
And they dropped that to 21% with the idea that if corporations have more money, they'll reinvest in capital, they'll reinvest in equipment, they'll reinvest in people. And that's the whole idea. So what we don't know, though, as a nation, are we going to see companies like Apple or Coca-Cola, are they going to actually reinvest, or are they going to pay that out to their investors?
So let me interrupt you on that one thought real quick, because the idea of reinvesting in their people, well, if they had this huge tax burden before, 35%, and they weren't spending, the one area you can spend it on and get the deduction is your people. So by reducing it from 35% to 21%, there's no more incentive to invest in your people because it was a bigger incentive to invest in your people before.
Well, because you got a much more bang for your buck. Now,
on the write-off.
That's right. Now you're looking at profitability, and that's one of the challenges, I think, with large corporations. The boards are really constantly pushing high profit margins. So we don't know if that's going to translate in. There's certainly going to be industries where that does benefit them. And the other side of the corporate tax reform is they put in place some more immediate expensing of certain purchases so that instead of spreading it out over multiple years, that they can deduct it immediately. That should help to accelerate accelerate some of this. Additionally, they saw the repatriation of cash from overseas.
And I think that was important, and I love that. Tell me about that.
So right now you're looking at companies like Google and Apple and these real big heavy tech companies. They're sitting on, I think it's pushing like $1 trillion in cash. It's an amazing amount of money.
Right.
So they basically said, I think the number is 15.5% on cash. If you bring it back, you pay that one-time tax, and I think they have a few years to move that money back. Or if you're international or a company that has already reinvested the capital in another country, then I think they can bring it back at 8%. So that should bring a lot more capital back to the U.S. But again, we don't know if it's going to create jobs or if it's going to go back to investors. And frankly, that's okay. It should create economic activity. If it goes back to investors, as Americans, we're investors. So that money goes back to us. We can put that money back to work and spend it.
Well, I love the idea of putting the money back into businesses so they can hire people, so that they can build facilities in the United States. Those are things that put people to work, right?
But they did not create like true incentives for that.
Exactly. And that was my concern is, okay, why wouldn't you take that 21% to 35% and say, look, if you want to write off that new building that you built and it cost you $1 billion, you can write it off the first year. Or you could, because then it would incentivize us using that money. They didn't do that. The other concern I have is, we'll just pay out more dividends. And that's a good idea because all of our 401ks, for example, many middle America's money's invested in the 401k, and I think that's fantastic. But does that put money in the economy? My 401k going from $10,000 to $12,000 this year makes me feel better, but doesn't put money in the economy necessarily.
Well, now it comes back to your original question: did they do the right thing? And it's like, how much bang will they get for this buck, right? How much are they going to get out of this? And we just don't know. But there was some other reform dealing with pass-through entities. So things like S corporations, LLCs, they changed the tax structure of those to try to be more pro-small business, where they're allowing from some greater deductions. I don't want to get into too many details because, frankly, there's just too many nuances. But they're doing it to try to really boost up the middle-class business owners, those that are in the 100, 200, 300,000 size businesses, to really boost up our economy and boost up more wage growth.
Yeah. You know, one thing I do want to ask you about, because it's a concept that I learned in college of all places, and, you know, the price elasticity of money and people investing. Several years ago, it was within the last, maybe a decade ago, the state of California, in its great wisdom, said, we're going to double car registration. So now we're going to make twice as much money. So we're making $1 billion a year in car registration. Now we're going to make $2 billion. Well, what ended up happening is they made far less than $2 billion because they realized that people said, why buy a new car if I'm subject to even more tax? So I'm going to wait a couple years. Or I'm going to buy a less expensive car because they had the luxury tax. So their thinking was, let's just double the cost. We're going to double the money. In reality, they didn't. We got a lot less because the consumer could make a choice. I'm on the positive side. I think by dropping taxes from 35 to 21%, which is, let's say, a 40% drop, off the top of my head, it's right around there. We're going to get more. We're not going to see a drop of collection of taxes by that same percentage. We're actually going to have a gain. And the reason why is I think that businesses are going to say, let's just do more business here. That's the positive I see.
Yeah, I think that's actually, we can't forget that that's going to be the impact of cutting taxes. The corporate tax revenue for the government is actually not that big anyway. It's a much smaller part of that. So corporations employ most of Americans. So I think getting them, incentivizing them, bringing those tax rates down, if they put that money back to work, and that is a big if. Yeah. And so we're going to have to wait and see. We're excited about the promise. We think this tax code, even though there's flaws in it, will be pro-growth. I think if we sit here a year from now, I think we're going to look back and say, you know what, that was a pretty good year.
I think it'll be pro-growth. The areas of my concern is high-cost states where you have a mother and a father of four that make good money with a higher-end mortgage, which is really not a higher-end mortgage in most of California and New York and Seattle in some cases now. They're the ones that are going to get adversely affected. Yeah, most of America will. But I do believe cutting taxes ultimately is good. But there's one stat I want to ask you about before we close up, and that is, it's projected that we're going to have $1.5 trillion in debt over the next 10 years. That concerns me. We're at well over $20 trillion now.
We are, and that is probably the one just more principled area where I have a problem with this. Is we're in an economy right now that's been growing slowly but still making progress. housing prices for the most part are at all-time highs, stock market's at all-time highs, and unemployment is really low. So it's a strange time to actually put together a tax bill that adds to the deficit at a time where our economy is doing well. And maybe it can be doing better, so I like that focus, but it also strikes me as a little odd that why are we doing this now? We need to save these major reforms for when things are struggling, or when we got to pull ourselves up and move forward. And so I feel like they could have been a little bit more responsible about setting some money away, paying down the debt, or at least being deficit neutral.
Yeah. Or being deficit neutral, not increasing the spending every year, and then you end up being deficit negative.
That's right. And so remember with this, we're talking about tax cuts for Americans. The politicians are not making decisions to cut spending.
Right.
There's no spending cuts going on here. Everyone's back to business as usual. Right. It's just we're getting some money back, which, hopefully as Americans, we'll probably put that back into the economy. Right. That's traditionally what we do. We get tax cuts, we put it back in.
Well, let me just tell you one thing. When you send money to Sacramento, when you send money to DC, I don't see a dollar for dollar trade-off. But when I spend money at the local grocery store and I keep it for myself, I'm going to use it for donations. I'm going to give it to my kids in order for them to enjoy. I'm going to go on a vacation. I'm going to do things. Anything we can do to put money back in the pocket of the people is really, really important. The couple things I'll just mention as we close out. The divorce penalty. It was pushed off a year. And what that was going to do, and I think that's significant, and that is in divorces from what I understand, 2019, and so they put it off a year, the tax is going to be based on the person making the majority of the income. So if it's the spouse making more money, let's say they're making $200,000 a year and they're paying the other spouse $6,000 a month in alimony, that's going to have to be that tax is going to be paid by the person making more income, thus the government making more income.
Correct. And in California, that's spousal support, and that's going to be a loss for the family because the government's going to keep more, the family is going to get less. And we already know when families split, you got two households to pay for. It's a lot harder.
It's already a struggle, right?
This is going to make it even more expensive. Yeah. The one thing, just to remind you as we wrap up, is there's one thing that's happening to business owners, and this is going to impact all business owners as well as big corporations. The inability to deduct any entertainment. So part of obviously building a business, you're doing some marketing, you're doing advertising, you're doing entertaining with key clients. One of the things that's happening going forward is they're taking this to a basically zero deductibility. That could have some profound impact on certain industries that are more focused on hospitality, entertainment. So it'll be interesting to see what that actually happens and how that gets put into play.
Well, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thanks for talking. I know it's a Friday afternoon before a big weekend, the Christmas weekend. I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. You got a household full of kids?
Yes, we do. So we'll be busy.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Vance with Vance Wealth, a boutique financial planning firm here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show. Coming up next, Carl Goldman. We're going to talk about the local property taxes and specifically the tax that we're putting on the property owners for cleaning up the salt issue in our waters. I'm your host, Fred Arnold on KHTS.
The minute I open my door, Debbie Morris has a problem. I say, oh my gosh, a really big problem. The dog, the cat, my 3-year-old. Debbie's house is a mess. How can one family create this disaster? Debbie needs Made for You. I need help. Professional residential and commercial cleaning, locally owned. You choose the schedule, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or even one-time seasonal cleaning. Call 255-2922. That's 255-2922. Made for You.
Made for You rescued me.
Drug and alcohol use can lead to troubles at school or work, relationship problems, financial or legal difficulties, medical and psychiatric issues. I'm Bob Sheritz, the host of the Way Out Recovery Hour, airing every Monday at noon. The Way Out Recovery Hour features prominent guests and organizations discussing the epidemic of drugs and alcohol in our valley. Don't miss the Way Out Recovery Hour every Monday at noon. Asking for help is the first step. There is the way out.
At Jersey Mike's, we think there's a whole lot of wow to be found between 2 layers of fresh baked bread. Like, wow, this sub sandwich sure has a little something something special. And wow, Juice does for sub sandwiches what spinach does for a certain well-known sailor man. Because we never just make a sub. Every sub we make is a sub above. Jersey Mike's. Be a sub above.
Your Santa Clarita Jersey Mike's, a proud sponsor of Santa Clarita High School football. Mission Valley Bank puts the community in community banking. They strive to be your most trusted bank. Mission Valley Bank is happy to sponsor KHTS Holiday Music. Happy holidays!
KHTS Holiday Music also brought to you by Chiquita Canyon.
From all of us at Chiquita Canyon, we'd like to wish you and your family a happy, prosperous holiday season. This year, Chiquita Canyon is proud to sponsor holiday music on your local hometown station, KHTS. Happy holidays.
Don and Gino here. So we know you want to have fun learning about real estate and finance. You're going to want to tune in this Saturday, 9 a.m. to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here on your hometown station. Hot topics, as always, guiding you to personal and financial wellness. And that's right, you don't want to miss it. So again, this Saturday, 9 a.m., and then we replay it online Sunday, 9 a.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. right here on the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show. Join us.
All-Star Sports Grills is the best place in town to catch a Dodger game on one of their 17 screens and choose a cold one from 23 different tap beers. All-Star Sports Grills prides itself on their fresh, made-to-order menu, including half-pound Angus burgers. Enjoy an All-Star comedy show the fourth Wednesday of the month. All-Star Sports has a pets-friendly and smoking patio. All-Star Sports Grills on Bouquet Canyon, north of Plum Canyon. KHTS strives to give the Santa Clarita Valley all the information they need. And when our computers aren't working the way they should, we call Resurgence, your true source for IT. Resurgence provides outstanding customer service while also providing the highest technical ability. They strive to do what's best to improve and protect your business. For more information on Resurgence, call 349-4114 or visit resurgenceit.com.
KHTS.
Right? Don't you love Elton John?
I love Elton John.
He's the best. Welcome back to the Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show.
Have you ever seen Elton John perform?
I have. I had the most amazing first date-ish with Norma, my girlfriend, and it was phenomenal. It was so special. We went. I said my dream is to go see Elton John. We flew out to Las Vegas because he's a what do they call the headliner there in the spring and in the fall, and we had the most wonderful day. And what an entertainer he is,
Yeah, we saw that show, just unbelievable.
Yeah, he's an entertainer, and he's there to entertain. But we're talking about.
I got to interview him.
Did you?
One-on-one, just like you and I are sitting here, way back. This goes back into the
when you had hair.
70s when I had hair. I was not wearing an elf outfit, but I no.
Yeah, for those of you that have been listening to the show and watching it, I was in an elf outfit. You could probably see my leg now. I did change into a little bit of a suit on the upper end. There we go.
Had I known, I would have brought my Santa outfit and matched you.
That would have been great. Yeah. Anyhow, I want to talk about taxes, and I want to talk specifically about property taxes and the new, I'm going to call it the SALT tax, sanitation district, though, not the one on the federal side, but the one on the state side that talks about or that addresses the issue of dumping salt into the Santa Clara River for the downstream users. Tell us a little bit of background behind that and what it's about for those listening for the first time.
Sure. Well, we being the valley, the Santa Clarita Valley has been in a battle with the farmers in Ventura over the salt content because our water leaves when we finish running the sink or running our sprinklers out there. The water goes down and out down the river, the Santa Clara River.
Towards the ocean?
Towards the ocean, but it goes along the 126,
okay.
Just to give it a geographic perspective. And as it travels along the 126, it goes through a lot of farms, all that. You've got a lot of farming out there. And so
what do they recycle that water, or are they talking about the groundwater it goes into? Because
it's a combination. It's ground. They don't recycle the water, but they do. The water does go through some kind of purification before that.
And they use it. Okay.
And so it doesn't just go from our toilet straight down down the 126. It goes into a treatment plant, gets treated, and then sent down. But also there's runoff that also goes down there. As the water has gone down there, the salt levels have been fairly high.
They were elevated, right?
High. They're elevated, and they were elevated enough to cause the farmers out there, particularly the avocado farmers and the strawberry farmers, to get upset because their claim was that it was hurting their crops.
Now, this was 12 years ago.
This goes back even more than 12 years ago.
Okay, so 20. And then the city initiated let's get rid of the salt tanks, that we had.
Right.
So we got rid of all those because we recognized that we wanted to give the water downstream the least amount of sodium as possible, right?
Correct.
So as a city, we took the initiative to lower it, and it includes the chemicals we put on our lawns. It includes our swimming pools. It includes
the water treatment that you have in your home. The water softeners all became salt-free.
So as a city, we took the initiative to clean all that up, but it wasn't enough, right? And they want us to drop water downriver almost to the equivalent of what we get it in some cases from the Delta.
Right, and what makes it even tougher and trickier is obviously the salt levels coming from the Delta vary depending on each year, each month, each week, depending on the rainfall that comes in and the snow melting and other conditions. The other unknown in there, the other variable is all along the 126, the farmers are using fertilizer and other stuff. So as their water comes in and joins ours heading toward the ocean, they've added and contributed to their own salt content there. So
and so that created the water board to put restrictions on how much salt we can have in the water we put downstream.
Right. The water district came down, the sanitation district came out and basically imposed a fine on Santa Clarita and mandates on Santa Clarita. This only impacts Santa Clarita Valley. Mandates on Santa Clarita to get the salt down to levels that are
unheard of. In fact, they're levels that the last I knew when I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce was the lowest in the country.
Right.
So it's interesting. I asked a good friend of mine, an old neighbor. I've lived in a few houses, so you can't identify who it was, right? Owns a farm downstream. And he goes, that's a bunch of nonsense. He goes, I have record. I have great crops. I've got no problem with my crops. There's no problem with my avocados, no problems with my oranges. He says it's a bit overkill.
Right, and now we're paying the price for it, and as business owners, we're the ones mostly impacted by it, and they've divided up the assessment by the category of business. So we're a pretty benign business when it comes to use of water here being a radio
station. You're not a salon, you're not a spa, you're not a...
we're not a golf course, we're not a car wash. So we're at a lower level, but we're looking at property tax increases in the thousands of dollars.
I recently saw an owner that had purchased a building within the last 3 years, and their tax went up by $3,500. It went up 0.34, or right around their percent, as a percentage increase, which is a lot of money because that small business owner runs a business within that building.
Right.
And that's money they can use for raises, for employee incentives, for better workspace, to invest in marketing that's going to put money in the pocket of other business owners. And that's the consequence that they don't see.
Right. So that money now is being used to get the salt water levels down with more purification here in Santa Clarita. And you're talking about a business that's not in one of the critical categories. Fred, I honestly don't think when you do the numbers that we'll ever see another golf course being built here in Santa Clarita. It's not going to happen.
How tough it's going to be to have a salon?
Right. Car washes. And then the one that's hit really high too, restaurants.
Yeah.
Restaurants are being clobbered.
And let me just tell you, restaurants got hit dramatically with the minimum wage because when you raise everybody's minimum wage, the cooks now need to get more money. everybody across the board needs to get paid more, and the big challenge. And I want to address one more thing when it comes to taxes, and I'm glad we talked about this issue with the local sanitation district and SALT, because you need to be aware of it. Look at your tax bill. Did it change at all where it says sanitation district? Look at the percentage last year, look at this year, and then look at next year. And that's for that. Let's talk about very important, and that is building new homes. Right now, a majority of homes built in the United States are 2,400 square feet or bigger, which is just unconscionable. It's crazy. And the reason why there's no homes for younger Americans. And what's unconscionable about it is builders can't build lower than that profitably because it costs so much money in taxes and local state fees. Let's talk about some of the fees for construction.
And also, to add to this, not just for the first-time home buyers, but the seniors who want to downsize and move down, there's no inventory.
There's no inventory because no one's building homes 1,600 square feet because it's not profitable to do that. So let's talk about, you got the school tax, right?
Right.
For the schools. You've got the city tax.
Bridge and thoroughfare.
You got the county. You got the bridge and thoroughfare. You've got the sanitation district to hook up, right? You've got the. I'm sure there's police and fire, isn't there? I think there's fire.
Right.
You got to go to all, and you got to pay them all off. You know, talking about a country that you got to pay them all off to do business, and that's what's unconscionable. Is it costs so much? It's been argued $88,000 to build a home before you put a stick in the ground. If that is the case, that's why it doesn't make any sense to build a 1,600 square foot house.
Particularly, and I don't know if that number you're saying are California numbers.
No,
or
nationwide.
national.
This is nationwide.
California is much, much worse, Fred, because you have the environmental piece of it that's in the mix, and any development that's going to be able to amortize themselves out with enough homes most likely are going to have to go through a challenge with the environmental on that, and the lawyers get in the mix, and then it becomes very, very, very expensive. I would suspect that California is double or triple that amount in fees.
Absolutely, and then you pay, you pay the highest gas tax in the country. You pay probably the highest one of the highest property taxes, one of the highest state income tax. You have sales tax. All this to be, and I bring this up not to be a wet blanket, but to say, be educated, understand what this all means, because we can't continue to do that because it slows economic recovery. And it's money that comes out of the pocket, and it goes to Sacramento, it goes to local governments, and it goes to D.C. Who's going to spend your money more efficiently? You go into the supermarket. You putting money into the going to the local salon and paying that person who's going to put it in local community, who's going to put it in local community, or is it the government that's spending it in Sacramento and D.C.? And I would argue all day long that it's you're the best at spending your own money and where you want to allocate it. And we just want you to be aware of these things because it's getting to a critical point. There's a tipping point where it becomes uneconomical to live in certain locations in this country.
And we're seeing that here in California, particularly for small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting tougher and tougher and tougher to start a business, to operate a business, to run a business, and do it profitably in this state.
If my taxes were 20% lower, my biggest expense is payroll, right? Where would that money go to? It'd go to raises. It would go to bonuses. It would go to a better work environment because I love my people and my work. But we're squeezed, and that's where it goes. Let's have a country where we give people a hand up and not a hand out. Let's have a country where the people make the decision on where they want to put their money. And I think that's really something that we have to look at in the future so we don't leave our children with too much in taxes. Yeah.
Fred, I know I appreciate you hosting this hour and talking about it. We could go on for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
You know, we do this Sacramento trip every year. It's KHTS, and you've been on it many years, where we take issues and try and delve into those and let the politicians up in Sacramento get an understanding of what it's like on the ground. And that's one thing that everyone can do. If you're interested in the trip, contact us. We'll also be doing a DC trip in October. and talk about the federal issues. And then a lot of what you mentioned are county and local issues as well.
Yeah. I want to address that. When you go to Sacramento or D.C., I've been doing it for 2 decades, where part of the Broker Association, KHTS, and the City of Santa Clarita Chamber of Commerce, and to go talk to our elected officials. Are we going to necessarily get our elected official if they're on the right, vote for the left, or if they're on the left, vote for the right? I don't think so. But where I think we make the biggest impact as a society is in the back end. Senator Will, Assemblyman Acosta, and Congressman Knight, they can go back there and when the bill's getting written, put things in there or influence that to have either less of an impact in a negative way or more of an impact in a positive way. And I think that's where that's where you can maneuver around, is educate them. If you're a hairstylist or salon owner, let them know what the high cost of doing business is. If you're a restaurateur, how do I say that? Restauranteur. No matter what business you are, you might not think you can influence somebody to go to the other side of the aisle, but you can certainly give your expertise on the effect, and then they can work behind the scenes in their committee to make sure that it doesn't have as detrimental effect on your business, spurring economic growth. Yeah.
Fred, thank you for sharing this.
Absolutely. Carl Goldman, the show, when is it? Sacramento.
The trip, Sacramento is March 12th, 13th, and D.C. will be October 1st. Contact us at KHTS, and we'll tell you how to join us.
Yep, 298-1220. Well, I hope you enjoyed this last hour, the special hour, the Santa Clarita Business and Real Estate Show on taxes. This is your hometown station, KHTS. Kyle Janins, thanks for running the board. Have a great afternoon. Merry Christmas.